Hello, dear scholars. Today, I'll be taking up the topic of comprehension, rather, reading comprehension with you all. Now, first, we need to understand what does it mean. What does the word comprehension mean? So, the idea basically is to, comprehend something, or to understand something, okay, or to, acquire or grasp some idea that is there in any passage in a complete manner. Okay. So, in the competitions where you find questions based on comprehension, okay, we see that the questions they are designed. The purpose of such questions is to uh, the purpose of such questions is talking about. Okay, now what do these abilities include? So, first is understanding the meaning of individual words and also the sentences. Now, since comprehension is all about understanding, so one needs to understand or get an idea of the words that are there, the kind of words that have been used. Of course, we may not be able to, at times it happens that we are not able to grasp all the words that are there or the vocabs that are there. Which is quite logical because we all are not walking dictionaries. So, when we are attempting a passage, it is likely that we may come across many such words that we may not be acquainted with. Okay, so we need to understand. Now, how do we understand those techniques or how do we understand those words and also the sentences? Okay, that is where our ability lies, or how we are able to grasp an idea about what that word means or what the author has tried to say in the sentence. Okay, now the next is understanding the meaning of the paragraphs and the larger bodies of text. Now, at times, we are also made to read long articles or maybe some essay where we have different paragraphs. Okay, so not in the context, maybe sometimes in the context of comprehension passages that we get in the exams, but otherwise. So when we have many paragraphs, okay, when we have an article or an essay, so we are also required to understand the meaning of those paragraphs, because all those paragraphs in a particular essay, they carry different ideas, but they all are, we can say they all are connected to each other in some way or the other, or to the entire essay. Okay, so we are dealing, say, whatever topic we are dealing on, say if we are dealing on any essay on, say, feminism, or an article on feminism, so we'll be having different paragraphs comprising that article, and all those paragraphs will be talking about feminism, but in a different manner, okay, with some different aspects. So they all are connected to each other, but they form a larger body of text, right? So one is also required, one needs to have that ability, one needs to, acquire that ability to understand what the paragraphs or the text or the article, whatever one is reading, what does that mean? Okay. Then, talking about a passage, for example, what happens that uh, there are the writer, the author of the passage, okay, he may include several things, or the passage may comprise some points where the author wants the reader to focus upon. So they are the major points, okay, which the writer or the author wants the reader to understand. And then there are some minor points which do not create much impact on that passage, but they are existing alongside the major points. So one needs to distinguish, one needs to possess that ability as well, so that one can differentiate between what are the minor and what are the major points that one needs to focus upon when reading the passage. Another thing, at times we are also required to summarize a passage. Say if a passage is quite long, like when we talk of précis writing, or when we talk of writing a paragraph. Say if we have a whole length or a good length of an article, so we are asked to summarize the same. So unless we are able to grasp the main idea or the main content, or what the writer has tried to say in that passage, in that essay or article whatsoever, what happens? We will not be able to summarize. Okay, so that ability also needs to be wired so that we can present a gist of the paragraph of that passage, a big passage, say, in a small length. Okay, in a short form, in a shorter version, in a summarized manner. Okay, then that is not only enough in a comprehension. The next thing is that we have to draw conclusions from the information that is provided. Okay, now what is the idea of making one read a full passage or a paragraph? That what the author is trying to say, or what conclusions he is trying to draw us to, okay, to form an opinion. So we need to have that ability also, or a scholar or any candidate or a reader needs to possess that ability. And it all comes from reading only. The more we read, the more we are able to acquire these abilities. Then comes the reasoning part. What happens at times, when we say, there is a phrase called to read between the lines. At times the author may not state things clearly. Okay, uh, so some data, some information may be missing, which the writer or which the author wants the reader to infer. Okay, that what is missing here, or what does the author intend to say. Okay, so that reasoning ability also needs to be there. Okay, then next is understanding the structure of a text in terms of how the parts relate to one another. Means, when we are reading a comprehension passage, when we are reading a passage, we also have to focus not only on the content that is there, the structure. It could be the grammatical structure, it could be the semantic structure, it could be the syntactical structure, different type of structures, how that passage has been framed, okay, or how the writer has created that passage, and how these structures, okay, these grammatical structures, the kind of language that has been used, whether something has been said in an active voice or in a passive voice, as we discussed in the earlier classes, okay, how they relate with each other, okay, or how they are connected. Okay, so the next is that one has to identify the author's assumptions and perspective. Okay, so when we are reading, as we read, we we develop that ability as well to identify what the author's assumption is, or what is his perspective. Okay, what idea is he trying to prospect, to project or to portray. So what is his perspective, or what is his idea on a particular issue, particular aspect, particular topic? Perhaps we need to identify that as well. Okay, after that comes the analyzing part. Now this analysis of a text, okay, it comprises different things. We'll take up that later, but basically it is not only about reading a passage, it is also about the analysis of the passage, as to how do we analyze a passage from different points of view, from different aspects. Basically talking about the structure of the passage, okay, what the writer is trying to say, the kind of words, vocabs, language, sentences that the writer has used, or what is he trying, or where does he want the reader to reach. Okay, and the conclusions where he wants us to reach. Okay, so that is the point. So all this comprises your comprehension, that what happens when we are reading, or what is required, or where is one supposed to reach, or the abilities that one needs to acquire when one is reading a comprehension passage, or when is someone is trying to comprehend something. So we need to focus on these points. Now, when we talk of reading comprehension, certain techniques or strategies, you can say, have been suggested. Now, one of them, I'll start with skimming as the technique of reading. Now, what is skimming? Now, it is a very selective kind of reading method. Means, where we do not read word to word, we do not read the passage word to word or line to line. The idea is to focus on the main ideas of the passage. Okay. The basic purpose is to get the gist or get the essence of what is the message that the author is trying to convey, to extract that message basically. Then another thing about skimming is that the reader, you know, he skim reads to get a clear general idea. Now skim read means that one moves his or her eyes on whatever one is reading. It could be an article, or we'll take some examples of skim reading when this these pointers get over. Okay, so idea is to focus or to get a general idea. It's like a bird's over eye view, or you can say it's like a overview of trying to get what the writer is trying to say, rather than reading the passage word to word. Okay, like what happens? Say if you go to a bookshop, okay, you find different kind of fiction books over there. Now, and so how do we get to know that what kind of book is it? So what do? We quickly browse through the pages, okay, and we just have a glance at what is being written. So it's like glancing at the content, okay. So to get an idea how that or what that book is about or what the story is about, that makes us decide whether we need to buy that book or go out. Does it suit our interest or not? Fine. Then it is like simply glancing to see whether that particular passage, article, or whatever we are reading, in a general sense, not talking from the competitive point of view, where we are supposed to read a passage, but there also at times this skimming technique of reading is applicable. Okay, where we try to get the idea of the entire passage. Okay, so in short, you can say that we try to understand the passage in brief. Okay, that what does it say? So, what is the benefit of skimming? It is like you can say that it saves a lot of time because we are not reading word to word, line to line. We are not reading all the sentences. But yes, when we are following the information, we follow it in a linear passage, in a linear manner. Means follow it line to line. Not that we are reading it word to word, but whatever glance we are having at it, or when we are rolling our eyes or moving our eyes on the content that is there, we follow it in a linear manner to get an idea. Okay, we do not follow any other pattern. So it is like reading at a faster rate. And what happens that when we follow this technique as and where applicable or as and where required, okay, what happens that we are able to grasp more in less time. Okay, now let's take some examples of skim reading that we follow in our daily lives. Now, when we read the newspapers, I'm sure we do not read all the articles. Say, even if it's the front page, what happens when we read the headlines? We skim through the content that is there, the report that is there in the news. Okay, we do not read it word by word. And when we turn or flip the pages of the newspapers, we focus on the different newses, and then based on the topic, on the title that is there, we skim through the information that is provided. We rarely, except for a few articles that we may be interested in, or maybe the headlines, okay, that are really important for us to read deeply, read and understand deeply. Generally, what happens, we skim through the news and we get an idea. Okay, now this news is about some incident that has taken place somewhere. So we follow the skimming method generally in our daily lives when we are reading a newspaper. Similarly, like we have medical reports. Okay, so when the doctors, when they go through the reports, okay, they just glance through it and they come to know they get an idea of what the report is rather than reading it word to word. Okay, because they are experts in that field. So then what about when we are appearing for an exam? All of us, we do some last moment revision, say a couple of hours before the exam or 3 to 4 hours before the exam. What happens? We skim read. We do not read different topics that we have prepared for the exam word to word. Okay, we skim read, we just roll our eyes, we just take a general idea, we glance through the pages of our textbooks or of our notes that we have prepared with the idea to, just to make a revision of what we have done so far or what we have prepared. That is the point. Then we come to the next reading technique. Okay, so from skimming, we move to the next reading technique, that is scanning. So when we talk of scanning means that when we are looking for a particular information, okay, say it could be someone's name or any information that is there in a passage. Talking in the context of a comprehension passage that we get, at times we are made to, we are asked that where does this word lie, or where do we find this information? What happens? That we, in a very speedy manner, we dart through the text. Now here, what happens? We are not concerned with the other information that is there, because we are looking for a particular word, we are looking for a particular statement that the author may have mentioned, or we may be looking for a particular phrase that is there. At times they are italicized, at times they may be in the very same font like the passage, where the writer, sorry, wants the reader to scan through, to scan the word that is needed. So in the process of scanning, what happens? We, we ignore the unnecessary information, because our focus lies only in searching for the information that we need to answer. So it is like looking for a specific fact without reading the entire content. Okay, so this kind of reading, scanning, now it involves, the rolling of eyes in the entire study material, looking for a specific information that we have to locate. Okay, it could be a keyword or any such thing. So this kind of technique of reading, now it has more to do with searching something rather than reading something. Okay, so rather than reading the entire content, the focus in this kind of reading lies on searching for some information that may be related to the question that we have to answer. Okay, so at times what happens now, when we are comprehending something or when we are attempting a comprehension passage, we follow different techniques. At times we follow the skimming method, and all these techniques, they are all applicable when we are reading. Okay, there is no one particular technique that we have to follow, because we also have time constraints when we are trying to attempt a comprehension passage, right? So at times we have to skim through the passage, at times we have to scan for the information based on the questions that are available that we have to answer. Okay, so this technique basically, it relates to more of searching rather than reading the entire text. Also, when we are searching for a word, we do not follow the linearity of the passage, means we do not follow it line by line, because our focus lies only on the searching part, searching of a particular information. So we pass over, or we just pass through the information that is actually irrelevant. Okay, so we can say that scanning is actually a search oriented reading process. We can address it that way, that it is a search oriented reading process where once the answer is found, the process stops, because our aim is only to look for that particular phrase, line, whatever it is. Okay, so once we have found that answer, the entire reading process stops there. Then, so now the reader, once he has found the answer to the question that he was looking for, okay, he knows, and the reader knows that what he is searching for. So obviously he would not like to read it further. Now, let us take up some examples of scanning. Now, when we are searching for a word, for the meaning of a word in a dictionary, okay, we will not flip through each and every page of the dictionary. Say, for example, if we are looking for the meaning of the word unique, for example, what would happen? We'll simply jump to the letter U, and then we'll follow the next letter N, Ni, and we will start searching for the meaning of the word that we are actually looking for. Okay, so we are not concerned with any other word that starts with U or any other word that ends with the letter E, because our focus lies only on that particular word. So we are following a scanning technique here. Okay, so Then, or you can say, when we are searching for a name in a list, what happens when the results are declared at times in the colleges? Okay, what happens? Either we are, either the names are displayed or the roll numbers are displayed. So, what are we doing there? We are just concerned with the information that relates to us. If it's a name list of the names that have been declared, so we are focusing only on our name. That okay, let me check, let me scan for my name in the list, whether it appears there or not. We are not concerned with what how many other names are there or how many other roll numbers are there. So where does our focus lie? In searching what we want to search, what we are looking for. Similarly, we have the table of contents, okay, where there are different topics mentioned. So what will we search for in a scanning technique? What are we looking for? We are looking for the particular content and on which page does that content lie. So we are just scrolling through and focusing on the word that we are looking for rather than reading the other contents in the table or other articles or other items that are mentioned there. Fine. After this, the skimming and scanning technique, another strategy that is quite important, I would say, is the intensive reading. Now, what does intensive reading means? When we are deeply reading or deeply studying something, you can relate this with your academics also. When you are reading academic texts, okay, or where you have the aim to prepare for an exam, you make an in-depth reading of something, right? So that is called intensive reading. We are reading something intentionally, intensively, quite quite in depth. So the purpose here, where does the what does the focus lie? The focus actually lies on the content and the manner in which that content has been presented. You can call it the grammatical structures here, or you can say the semantic details, means how it how does it relate with the meanings, okay, or how the sentence has been formed, the sentence structure, okay, the syntax part, the kind of vocab that has been used. So the reader focuses on all these things when one is reading in an intensive manner. So what happens? This kind of reading makes the reader become familiar with the text, okay, and the more he the more deeply one reads, the more slowly and in an understanding manner one reads, and the more one focuses on the vocabs, the syntax, and the different structures of that text, the reader becomes familiar with it, okay. The more comprehension abilities, the more understanding abilities one develops, okay. Now when one does this kind of reading, the information stays in the mind of the person. I'm talking from an academic point of view. Those who do intensive reading, of course, they retain that information in their mind for a longer period of time. Okay. Then, in an intensive reading, what else do we follow? We identify the key expressions. Okay. We also read things in a very attentive manner. Okay. Not like any other or leisure kind of reading. Then every unfamiliar word or maybe the expression that we are following, okay, we may not be able to understand the meaning of the same, but when we are doing this kind of reading, we try to decipher, we try to find the meaning that about that word that we are unaware of, or we may not have heard or read it somewhere, okay, or it could be any such expression. So when we are talking about in-depth reading or intensive reading, we also decipher or try to find out or try to arrive at the meaning of the word or the expression that is given there in the text. So what is the objective of this kind of reading? The objective of this kind of reading is to gain maximum understanding, okay, and build more of knowledge. That is what the objective of intensive reading is. So it is like reading in an in-depth manner, reading quite deeply. Now, before going to critical reading, I would like to add on something in between, that is something called extensive reading. I have not placed it over here because extensive reading generally it's like a leisure kind of reading where you are reading larger text in a very extensive manner. Means they could relate to some any sort of novels that you are reading. Okay, there may be some autobiographies, biographies, or any such text for which you don't have a set target. It is just that whenever you are free or you are fond of reading, you read those texts. Okay, so they are called they are meant for leisure kind of reading in your free time, right? So we also have something called extensive reading, but we are not focusing on that from our um, from a competitive point of view. We will focus only on these techniques. Then we talk about the critical reading. Now, this is another kind of reading, okay, where the reader has to, you know, he has to apply his critical thinking abilities while reading. Like you may be reading something, but you are not sure about the facts or the information, especially talking about the information or the news that we get these days, especially on the social media. Are all those information reliable? No, they are not. But many a times we read and we believe on those statements that are there. Fine. So we cannot say that we are being critical. So the idea is also to read things critically, means to apply our thinking abilities, or you can say to test the accuracy of the facts or the information that is there, so that you can arrive at the conclusion, at the correct conclusion. Okay, so by applying those critical abilities, those critical faculties, what happens? The reader the reader, he analyzes the ideas to reach the conclusion whether whatever has been stated or whatever information has been passed over to him, that information is accurate or whether it's fake. Okay, so the reader has to apply that critical faculties when someone is reading in a critical manner. Here, it is not only about reading those that information or the facts or whatever it may be in a deep manner. Here, what we also focus on is the background check of the author, because uh, you know when we watch so many videos on social media, we have different people. Similarly, we may come across different articles or different you know short materials which we may find interesting to read. Okay, but then they may appear to be a bit dicey. So when you are in the mode of critical reading, we need to also have a background check of the author, that who is the author of the text? Is he a renowned author, or is he a rising author, or the kind of opinion or ideology that author follows? Okay, to we also have to keep a check on the author's mindset. We also try to focus on the ideology of that author. So what would we find? Let's say if a particular writer, for example, now he follows uh, an ideology of any particular aspect. I would not like to elaborate on that, or maybe any the ideology of any uh, uh, say any religion. It could be anything on politics. It could be anything socially. So when you read that article and you find, so what would happen? And when you have take a background check of the author, you would find that this author belongs to this particular mindset, okay, or carries this particular mindset, or is a believer of this particular kind of ideology. So what would happen? That you may or may not agree with what that person has written, but when you are applying your critical thinking abilities, when you are applying your abilities, you would come to know, okay, that this author would always write in this very manner, okay, or maybe he may be persuading the reader to believe in what he is saying, right? So that is why at times critical reading is quite important when we want to, the critical reading, it actually helps us to can say maintain a neutrality, or to arrive at a neutrality of things. Not everything that we may read may be genuine. It may not appeal to our minds. Okay, then So when we are reading, we also do a background check of the author in this kind of reading. Also, now, like you can, as an example, you can take like reading news articles or news on social medias. Now, many a times we come across many such fake informations, and we also find people being misled on the basis of that information. Okay, so why are they misled? Because they have not read it critically, and they have simply believed in what they have read or what they have heard. Similarly, watching controversial news or maybe some advertisements, whatever. So when we are viewing such news, we find such controversies. So we need to apply our abilities to, resolve that controversy, at least for ourselves. The news may be controversial, but only by applying our critical abilities. What happens that we are able to, you know, make ourselves clear about what perhaps whether the news is correct or how it should have been, or which side of the news you find it as genuine and which side may have been created to to cause some sort of confusion. Okay, so that is all about the critical reading. So in our passages, I mean, even from a competitive point of view, when you are reading an article, what happens that uh, uh, many a times, from the way the author has portrayed his idea or the information, we come to know about his ideology, his mindset, or what the writer believes in. Okay, so that happens only when we are reading a text critically, right? So I feel uh, uh, we should stop here for this session, and then in the next class when we meet, we'll take up some comprehension passages. Okay, and then we'll try to solve them alongside. In the meantime, you can just read those passages so that when we meet next, we'll continue with the same topic. So that is all for today. And next time, we'll also talk about different types of writings that are there. Like we have expository writings, descriptive writing, narrative writing technique, and so on, alongside discussing these passages. Okay, so that is all for today. Thank you. Have a great day.